Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you so much. I'm Jennifer Spriggs, the Executive Director here for Emancipation Park Conservancy. And on behalf of the Board of Directors, myself, the rest of my executive team, and our partners from the Houston Parks and Recs Department, we want to welcome you here to what we call the center of the community. Such a historical gem, and we are glad to be able to be a host to this event here so that you all can enjoy what we have right here in our city. It is my thought that it is important that we all Houstonians have an opportunity to enjoy a space like this. And it is apparent to me that you all believe the same thing because there is a number of you here. Thank you so much for coming out. And I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. And if you all will welcome with me a leader in the city, a meteorologist, a journalist, a passionate volunteer, and a community leader. You're very welcome. Please, again, join me in welcoming our MC for this evening, Mr. Khambrel Marshall.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Ernie. Welcome, everyone, for this evening. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to the host organizations for organizing this event tonight. If you needed any greater indication about Houstonians' commitment and interest in a greener Houston, you need look no further than the list of folk and organizations who are supporting this event tonight. Air Alliance Houston, Bayou Preservation Association, Bike Houston, Buffalo Bayou Partnership, Citizens Environmental Coalition, Coastal Prairie Conservancy, Discovery Green, Emancipation Park Conservancy, McGregor Park Conservancy, Greens Bayou Corridor Coalition, the Heritage Society of Sam Houston Park, Herman Park Conservancy, Houston Arboretum, Houston Audubon, Houston Botanic Garden, Houston Parks Board, Houston Wilderness, Levy Park, Keep Houston Beautiful, Memorial Park Conservancy, Scenic Houston, Spark, Student Conservation Association, Trees for Houston, White Oak Bayou Association, Willow Waterhole Greenspace Conservancy. That is a good group of folk who are really, really interested in this event tonight. I saw Commissioner Rodney Ellis here earlier. I wanted to recognize him as one of our elected officials here that is in the building. I think he's out in the back. If you see him, wave and yell at him and thank him for what he's doing in this community. Well, we all know that parks and green space are great places to spend time with family, to spend time on the weekends, but it's much more than that. Parks are well-designed public spaces. They're critical for any city to compete globally and attract and retain top talent. Many folk who are trying to come to cities like Houston want to know what kind of parks it has there. They are key components of our city's economic vitality. Parks are good for us, literally. We know that studies have shown that spending time in parks or on trails or in nature can reduce certain diseases, improve our mental health, reduce stress, and oh boy, we could use some of that. Parks and green space can help us reduce urban heat islands like we've had over this past summer. 109 degrees is something that is not fun, but we had that this past summer. Many days with temperatures really hot. And these island impacts can reduce the scorching impacts of that. They can also help soak up floodwaters whenever we have those. Thankfully, we didn't have one of those today, but those parks do play that critical role. We have so many concrete spaces that water tends to run, but the parks are a good place to go ahead and take care of some of those torrential downpours. Parks make Houston more climate resilient, pure and simple. That is one of the things that they do. That's just one of many things that these parks are available for. Since we all know the importance of parks tonight. We want to hear our future mayor will address the need for additional public investment in and the equitable access for all Houstonians to quality parks, trails, and green space. The topic is timely, particularly given the recent report released this past week by the Kinder Institute for Urban Research. You may have read that. In addition to a nationwide assessment by the Trust for Public Land related to how investment in Houston's parks measures up regionally and nationally. Let's talk about the data. In that recent national ranking by the Trust for Public Land, Houston ranked 71st out of the top 100 cities in an overall ranking of our park system. Fourth best city in America, arguably the best city, yet we rank 71st. Why? A big reason is the lack of public funding from the city, especially when compared to our peers. That's important to note. At $32 per resident, the City of Houston Parks and Recreation Department ranks near the bottom for per resident spending among the most populous 100 cities in the country. We are 96th of 100 in that category. $32 per resident. Let's compare that to Dallas, where their Parks Department spends $121 per resident. In Austin, their Parks Department spends almost 5 times what Houston spends at $150 per person. And as part of the study released this week by the Kinder Institute, they asked over 4,000 Houstonians how much they thought the city should be spending on parks and green space. Well, 2/3 of Houston residents supported the city spending $100 or more per resident, far above the current level. Houstonians are not just hoping for additional public funding, they're willing to also commit to it themselves. About 70% of Houston residents said that they'd be willing to pay $2 a month if that money went to funding and improving and maintaining parks. Well, now that we've heard from the public and their support for the greater Houston area, the question is, are you ready to hear from these candidates tonight? I want to introduce them to you, and we will have them do 2-minute opening remarks, but I want to introduce all of them at once first. First, to my left, District I City Councilman Robert Gallegos has served in our City Council since 2013. Improving public safety and infrastructure are key priorities for Councilman Gallegos' campaign. He's talked about his passion for green space in his district. He's committed funds to support and enhance neighborhood parks. Welcome, Councilman, tonight. Mr. Gilbert Garcia. Gilbert Garcia is a financial analyst, is a managing partner of Gilbert Hamilton Associates from 2010 until 2000 Metro Board Chair. 2016, chaired the Metro Chair Board, where he oversaw the addition of 15 miles of light rail and a redesign of Houston's bus network. He has said he hopes to shake things up at City Hall by investing in community policing programs and equipment and auditing the city's housing and health departments to address residents' concerns. Mr. Garcia, thank you. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee is in her 14th term representing the 18th Congressional District, which includes where we are gathered here tonight, the wonderful Emancipation Park. Jackson Lee's priorities include, among many things, upholding constitutional rights and shaping legislation, including authoring the Reauthorization of Violence Against Women Act, which became law in 2022, and she was at the leading edge of the passing of the Juneteenth national holiday as well. So Congresswoman Jackson Lee, thank you. Mr. Lee Kaplan is a lawyer, founding partner of the Houston firm Smizer, Kaplan & Veselka. Mr. Kaplan's priorities include tackling issues like crime by increasing the number of Houston police officers and making changes to their training processes, addressing traffic issues, and streamlining the city's permitting processes. Thank you, Mr. Kaplan, for being here this evening. State Senator John Whitmire has represented the 15th Senatorial District, comprised of North Houston and parts of Harris County for nearly 40 years. Senator Whitmire is chair of the Senate Criminal Justice Committee, a member of the Business and Commerce and Finance Committees. He's a leader in public safety, criminal justice, committed to supporting economic development gearing towards small businesses. Senator Whitmire, thank you for being here this evening. So as I mentioned earlier, this forum features a series tonight of 8 questions for which each candidate will have an opportunity to answer. But before we do that, first of all, we'd like to start with 2-minute opening statements from each candidate. And so we begin with that with Councilmember Gallegos.
Good evening. First of all, thank you for the invitation. We've participated in quite a few forums, and this is the largest crowd yet, so it's good to see that people are excited in regards to our green spaces and our parks. Again, I'm Councilmember Robert Gallegos. I represent District I. I've been a council member for the last 10 years. Out of the candidates that are running, I'm the one with the experience with current issues. Again, I'm chair of Quality of Life, vice chair of Economic Development, former chair of Neighborhood and Regulation Affairs. I ran for office back in 2013. My parents arrived as Mexican immigrants, young teenagers with their families escaping the Mexican Revolution in the early 1920s, settled in the East End. I had 7 children. I'm the youngest of the 7. So I understand what it means to have parks that are not welcoming in the East End as I was growing up. So that was one reason I ran for council. I know that these past 10 years, I'm proud of what I've been able to accomplish in regards to parks and green spaces. And I ask you to go to voterobertgallegos.com. I know my first year I had to take on in regards to the Botanic Garden and the Gus Wortham Golf Court issue. In regards to the Botanic Garden, possibly going to Gus Wortham. So I had to reach out to the community to hear from them to see what they wanted. And they overwhelmingly wanted to save the historic Gus Wortham Golf Course at its location. So we worked with the Houston Golf Association. They raised the money. They refurbished Gus Wortham. It's a beautiful golf course. But then I reached out to the Botanic Garden Board. And I said, I too want the Botanic Garden in District I. So working with the Botanic Garden Board, they went to Glenbrook Golf Course. They put the money in there. They refurbished the old Glenbrook Golf Course. And now we have 2 beautiful green spaces in District I that I am proud of. Not just for the residents in District I, but for the city of Houston. That's just 2 of the many parks that I've been involved in trying to refurbish and restore in District I. As the next mayor, I will continue to improve our city parks. It's so important that our children have a sense of pride to go to their parks and enjoy their parks. Thank you.
Thank you. Gilbert Garcia. By the way, in case I mentioned, we do have timekeepers out front. So we talk about times, we're keeping time up there, and so the candidates know that as well.
Keep me on time. All right. My name is Gilbert Garcia, and I'm running for mayor of Houston. I'm from Corpus Christi. I'm a product of public schools. I'm first-generation college. My first big break is I went to Yale. My second big break is I had a summer internship on Wall Street that led to a full-time job. I moved back to Houston in 1990. I've served on various public boards, various pension boards. I have served on various nonprofits. I have coached 40 seasons of soccer with my kids. I've done all those things. But like many of you, I'm frustrated with the city of Houston. It's not working for everybody. It works for the lobbyists, it works for the insiders, but at the end of the day, when you look at the paper and you see the DA investigating the housing department having to turn away a $60 million grant from HUD to build moderate income housing, when you see the health department raided by the FBI, when you see city hallers indicted, one of them already pled guilty, when you see that we still don't have a contract with our firefighters, when you see HISD taken over by the state, when you see this airport contract that had all kinds of hair on it, it was done 4 times, which is not normal. I've done big procurements. That is not normal. Of course, we've got to worry about boiling our water. Of course, the streets are not paved, all these things, and then we don't feel safe. At the end of the day, if you want the same old, and you want to sort of do what I consider to be insanity, doing the same thing, expecting a different result, I'm not your candidate. But if you want someone who's going to shake it up, that doesn't owe anybody anything, and therefore I don't have to worry about who endorsed me, who gave me a PAC check or anything. If that's what you're looking for, that's going to make Houston work for you, vote for Gilbert Garcia for mayor.
Congresswoman Jackson Lee.
Go Gilbert!
This is an enormously exciting opportunity. To see a room full of so many different people committed to the lifeline of our city, where people gather from all over in green space, sustainable, environmentally safe green space. I'm Sheila Jackson Lee, and I want to come home to be your mayor, to fix the city on the basic services, but to work with each and every one of you, because I love parks and have always done so. As a member of the Houston City Council under Mayor Whitmire and Mayor Lanier, I was one of the park's strongest supporters. There are over 380 parks in the Parks and Recreation, but there is a greater need to have more accessible parks in neighborhoods where people have no access. As a member of the United States Congress, I was a strong advocate for green space and had high ratings on the National Environmental Organization. I wrote the legislation along with my colleague, Senator Cornyn, to establish an Emancipation Trail that is a park that will come from Galveston all the way up to this Emancipation Park. By the way, funded mostly by Tiers, number 7, $38 million to redo this park. I see many opportunities for the Houston of the future to build its parks, to be able to put more resources, to be able to be called the Green City of America. I want to be able to be the crime fighter, to fix our potholes, to address the question of good health, to make sure that we have an economic engine, that I bring the national presence here, but I will not leave out our parks, because that unifies us and our neighbors. We are an international city, a destination city, but I can assure you, the Parisians will be jealous when they come to Houston under Mayor Jackson Lee, because we will have the kind of park love that no one can deny. I'm here to fight for you and your safety and your housing, for your better quality of life, but I'm here to be a park fighter as well. We're gonna have a grand time with Sheila Jackson Lee as mayor of the city of Houston.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Lee Kaplan.
I'm Lee Kaplan. I have never had a public position. I've come from the private sector. And I think there are 4 things we've got to tackle first. Most importantly, crime so people feel safe at their homes, on their streets, in their parks. Second, picking up the garbage. As I circled the park tonight, finding a place to park, right across the street, I saw a big dumping ground. Third is infrastructure and congestion. Fourth is permitting, so that young people can actually buy a house in Houston and not be pushed out of the city. At my law firm, we prize and we are known for competence, accountability, integrity. Those are things that are critical in a city. And if we want to address the needs of the city, then we have to be honest about those things and address them first. And that's not to say parks are unimportant. I grew up going to the July 4th fireworks at Miller Theater. And that was, of course, safer than what we did in Meyerland, where I grew up. The whole point of parks is to get kids engaged in the outdoors. I'm an assistant scoutmaster, an Eagle Scout. My son's an Eagle Scout. And I'm working with Troop 212 over on Southmore. And a lot of these kids haven't had much time in parks. You need to get the kids interested. There have to be things for them to do so that they want to go to the parks. It's easy for us as adults to say, let's go to the park. It's so restful. It's so great. It has trees. But the truth is, the kids have to want to go to the park. And that's something we have to pay attention to. I read the Kinder report as fast as I could during the day today. And I noticed the 3 things that the 3 mayors talked about. And the first thing that Bill White mentioned is run the city well, so you'll have the flexibility to do something about parkland. That's critical. Running the city well, because the mayor hires people. Thanks.
Senator Whitmire.
Thank you. And thank everyone that's present, and thank the organizers for bringing us together. We have a great city. We have great people. But there are some expectations that we have of City Hall that are just not being met. It's regrettable that we trail all the other major cities in the per capita expenditure on parks. It doesn't have to be like that. We come together, we can correct that. I didn't just start getting interested in green space and parks when I got in the mayor's race. Give you an example, 11th Street Park, Bird Sanctuary, About 15 years ago, Helen Huey, a council member in the community, were going to buy that 5 acres from HISD, but they didn't have enough money. They were going to sell the retail frontage on 11th Street. I got busy, raised $400,000, and today it's a great urban park. I'm working currently on trying to have a safer pathway into Memorial Park. Blossom and Westcott is a danger intersection. I've worked with the city, I've pleaded with the city to do a better job of signaling and letting bicyclers, strollers, and pedestrians know that that's a dangerous intersection and slow the traffic down. I'll go ahead and announce tonight something bold. I'm known as a fixer, someone that can bring people together to get things done. The University of Texas came down here 6 years ago and spent $300 million on South Main for what they proposed as a campus to compete with U of H. We blocked it. That 300 acres is sitting there. Think about going forward 10, 20, 50 years from now. Memorial Park and Herman Park have maxed out. We have a great opportunity, a bold move to get that piece of property. I will get UT to donate that to Parks and Wildlife. It'll take it off UT's books. Parks and Wildlife will partner with the city of Houston, and we will have one additional magnificent park. Give me a chance to show what experience, collaboration can get done for the people of Houston. Thank you.
Thank you all. During this question and answer period of the forum, each candidate will be allotted 90 seconds, a minute and a half, for each response. We're going to take turns giving each candidate an opportunity to go first. Responses will be timed, as you've noticed already, and so you'll be prompted when the time is up. Once the Q&A is concluded, they're going to wrap up with a 1 minute each comments to conclude for the evening. And for those who just can't get enough for this tonight, I know some of you are feeling they're like, man, oh man, this is what I came for. This is being recorded, so you'll be able to do this, to see this event again. It's on the website in a few days. It's called HoustonGreenCommitment.com. So those of you who are just chomping at the bit to watch this again, you're going to be able to do that there. All right, let's start out with our questions here. We'll start with Gilbert, since you were second last time around. Gilbert, something, by the way, you're all going to have this question to answer, something easy. This forum is about the importance of parks, obviously, the trails, a green space for recreation. Tell us what city parks you use on a routine basis.
Sure. That's an easy one for me. But first, I have coached 40 seasons of soccer and with 3 boys. And so I've played soccer throughout parks throughout the entire city. But the park that we use the most is right across the street from our office, which is Discovery Green. It is fantastic. Well, thank you. It is fantastic. And of course, it's a great example of private-public partnership doing something phenomenal. And if you look, when all kids of all types, colors, all parts of the city are there playing at this park. They're going crazy with the water fountains. They love rolling down that hill. It's a beautiful thing to see. And so we need to do more of that. So it's right across the street from my office. We often go get a Kona Ice because the Kona Ice truck is there. And so we love to get Kona Ice. And I love that park. And I think we need to do more of that to make the park accessible to more Houstonians in different parts of the city. But the answer is Discovery Green.
Thank you, Gilbert. Congresswoman Jackson Lee.
Well, I like parks, so I'm everywhere. And very quickly, this park, Emancipation Park, that has hosted us for so many activities, including Juneteenth, a federal holiday that I authored that will allow this city to celebrate more and more. McGregor Park, that is now under a reimagination. I remember saving a tree now in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King, Discovery Green. But then as well, if you have children and if you have grandchildren, you're in a lot of different parks watching the soccer games go on. So I have been able to see a lot of good activity in our parks. The Kirby Park, the new park, that's sort of an inner city park. It just shows that wherever people live, if it's green space, they will be there. And I do think it's important to take note of the fact that we can do a lot more with parks. All we need to do is to engage our public-private partnership. There is more private equity than you might imagine, joint ventures than you might imagine, and many other cities use private equity, private investment to collaborate with their park system and build their park system. So I love those parks, but if you've got a park, I'll be there because I love parks. Thank you.
Mr. Kaplan, your park.
The question is, favorite park?
Favorite park. Which one do you use? Which one do you use on a routine basis?
Memorial. I've got a walking group. We all have bad knees. It's a walking group. Used to be a jogging group. But we find our way across either to Memorial Park if we leave from one area or Herman Park if we leave from another. And I'm just sentimental about those. I grew up in those parks. I still love them. I played Little League next to Lovett Elementary at Meyer Park, but fortunately my forgettable career as a major leaguer, it still lies in that park. So it's Memorial and Herman for me because those are what I know.
Thank you, sir.
If you have not seen the Willow Water Hole, you've got to visit it. It's an undeveloped gym. It's not only a great detention pond, but it grieves me that we do not have the facilities there, the recreational, leaving it in its natural state. Please check out the Willow Water Hole. Certainly Memorial is an excellent park, but we've got to focus on neighborhood parks. There are so many neighborhood parks that folks do not even know about because they're not even designated. Inwood Forest has a park that they called me about years ago. Never been touched by the city of Houston, but it's in Houston. Jerry Eversole was the county commissioner. They asked me would I contact him, would he please just grade it so they could play soccer? I called Commissioner and he said, well, Senator, it's inside the city of Houston. We don't do county work inside the city of Houston. There are so many common sense and governance decisions that can improve the green space in the parks. We've got to collaborate with the county, do partnership with the county to remind them Houston is in Harris County. Certainly Commissioner Ellis and others have done a better job. We passed their bond issues. The city of Houston passes their bond issues. More times than not, they go to the unincorporated part of the county to develop it. My daughters played softball, girls softball. When they got in a tournament, we'd have to go to Champion Forest, unincorporated area. The county's got the best parks in the county there. We need them in the inner city. We need them to serve the people that pass the bonds. I can get that done.
Councilman.
Thank you. I take my dogs and I walk them at Memorial Park, also along Buffalo Bayou Park. Putting in 5-foot sidewalks around Gus Wortham. We also walk the dogs around Gus Wortham Golf Course. And then also I ride my bike along the greenways at Brays Bayou. And this coming Saturday, as a matter of fact, I'll be at the Miller Outdoor Theater in Herman Park, enjoying the Chicano Festival. So these are things that we were able to do. In Mason Park, for example, I was able to put a pedestrian bridge connecting the north side to the south side of Brays Bayou. Before, people had to walk on a 3-wide sidewalk on 75th Street to get from one side of the park to the other. You know, again, when I started with this evening, I said we need to make sure that our parks are equitable. When you have kids walking on a 3-foot sidewalk to get to the ball fields or going to the park, to the clubhouse, that's unacceptable. We now have a beautiful pedestrian bridge. I was president of the super neighborhood. I led the charge in getting letters from our elected officials, so that way TxDOT could put monies in. I was surprised it was TxDOT. I thought it was going to be the Houston Parks Department, but I was told by Joe Turner, no, it's TxDOT. So we sent the letters to TxDOT, and now we have a beautiful pedestrian bridge at Mason Park. These are things that I want to do as the next mayor to make sure that our parks are equitable across our city.
Thank you, Councilman. Congresswoman Jackson Lee, we're going to start with you on this question. Earlier this week, we talked a little bit about this, the Kinder Institute report that showed the Houston Parks and Recreation Department spends about $32 per resident compared to Dallas's, which spends 3 times of Houston per resident at $121. And Austin's is even more with $150. Houstonians never want to be shown up by our Texas peers. So the question is, will you commit to raising the per resident spending to the level of Dallas or Austin, and if so, how?
Well, I think it's already been noted by a small poll and the size of the people in this room that we love our parks. And so as mayor, I will look for ways of increasing the revenue that pointedly can be used for parks. It's already been mentioned that we live in jurisdictions. We live in the city of Houston, we live in Harris County, we live in the state of Texas, and we live in the United States of America. I've used federal funds to help the Buffalo Bayou Partnership. I've used federal funds to work to help the Houston Heritage Society, as well as I've used private collaborators to be able to keep the parks open. In the middle of one mayor's administration, it was so hot, they were closing all the pools in the parks. And I got a private donor to give almost $400,000 to keep every single pool open with staff. And so I will look to raise revenue, and I will look to engage the public to be able to raise those funds. Some say it will be $100, but I will constantly look for sources. I am really strong on the public-private partnerships and the collaborative governments that can work with us. Don't ignore federal government. We have the ability in the U.S. Department of the Interior to do more with local governments than has been done. I am singularly the only person on this podium today, stage today, to be able to extract those federal dollars, as I have done for a series of projects over the years, billions of dollars, up to $1 trillion that I've been able to bring to Houston. I will do that for our parks because our parks are our priority.
Thank you. Mr. Kaplan, will you commit to raising resident spending to the level of Dallas, or?
Well, I'll commit to the effective expenditure being at that level. And that means the private sector. There's a lot of money in this town, a whole lot. And there are a lot of people in the private sector who would like to do something, but haven't been told or had suggested to them what they ought to do. We have people who retire unwillingly at 65. They don't have too much to do. We have many people with wealth. And the mayor is the person who has to go to the private sector and say, I want you to do this. This is a project we need done. And it's only a mayor who interacts with the private sector. And I've represented everybody from indigent defendants to ExxonMobil in my time. Those are the kind of people we have to reach out to get the money. Let's be honest, the city cannot find the money in the budget. It's not there. So let's go to the private sector and be honest about it. We need your help. We will recognize you for your help. That's really critically important.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan.
As I mentioned a moment ago, in 2024, with limited funds, I do not believe we have the luxury of having a county park system and a city park system. They've got to come together and partner on behalf of Harris County residents, which includes Houston. We've also got to include the TERS and the management districts. They're going to have to assume more responsibility for parks and green space. And something is very serious tonight about whatever we talk about, whether it's public safety, mobility, flood control, we've got to reach out to the state of Texas. The relationship between the city of Houston and the state of Texas is broken. There's not a relationship from City Hall and the leadership in Austin. And we can fight them on their social issues, stand up and chastise them for the way they treat the transgender children and the way they treat women's health care and guns. I can go on and on. Take them on in a heated debate. But when it comes to resources and writing a budget, we've got to remind them, Houston furnishes the state 24% of its revenue. We've got to partner with Austin. When they're running surpluses, we've got to get our share. And we're only going to do that, and I'm uniquely qualified to explain to Austin how Houston goes is how the state of Texas is going to go. We've got to unite as a community, allow people to know that how Houston goes is how the state of Texas will go. With that, we can get additional funds.
Thank you, sir.
I know that the Kinder Institute did their report that you had mentioned earlier in regards to $32 are spent per resident in the city of Houston. That's just the city of Houston. But if you have the Kinder Foundation and others that are giving monies to our parks, that just brings us up to about $90, I believe. But yet, San Antonio and Austin and Dallas $121, $147 per resident. We need to do more. I know at the forums, I'm asking, as the next mayor, what I will do is work with the finance director and our controller to try to educate the voter in regards to the revenue cap. Last week, we voted to lower the tax rate for the 9th time in the last 10 years. It's going to save the average homeowner $35 a year for a $300,000 home. We could use that to hire more police officers, to buy more trash trucks so our trash trucks don't break down and your trash will be picked up on time, to actually spend it on parks, improving our parks. This is what I want to do as the next mayor. But again, as the next mayor, I want to work with the finance director and our controller, whoever that will be, to try to educate the voter, because it's going to have to go back to the ballot. And the voters are going to have to decide. But again, it saves the average homeowner maybe $100, $150 a year, which I would rather give to hire more police officers than improve our parks.
Well, I don't want to be a downer, but I'm going to be a downer. No, I'm not going to make false promises. I'm not going to make these nebulous things. I'm going to get money from here, and I'm going to get money from here, and I'm going to raise taxes. I'm not going to say any of that. Because at the end of the day, the number one issue we have is public safety. We've got to focus on public safety. The second issue we have is we've got to go, thank you, Senator, we've got to go into arbitration with the firefighters to implement the will of the voters that we voted for several years ago, and we're getting into a deeper hole every time we don't have that settled. Those things we got to get behind us. And ultimately, before we go into anything else, we then got to really, in my view, clean house or shake up City Hall. Because when you get to a situation when you cannot spend money from HUD, $60 million for affordable housing, you have to give it back, there is incompetence. And until we do anything to clean it up, I'm not in favor of raising taxes on anybody. There are too many people who are one check away from being homeless. And there are too many people who cannot even afford their water bills. And so my view is, let's tighten our belt, let's figure out where we are, let's implement the will of the voters, let's get people feeling safe again, and then we can start talking about other initiatives. But of course I want more parks, and of course I want to go to the private sector, but I want to be realistic with everyone and not make false promises that I can't keep.
Thank you, sir. So the next question, we're going to start with you, Mr. Kaplan. Is the city of Houston owns close to 1/3 of the land within its borders. A large portion of that is streets and concrete. Your administration will have the opportunity to make meaningful changes, be it through improvements to sidewalks, the regulation of digital ad kiosks, or adding tree canopy to reduce heat island impact. Can you name one specific policy that you would implement to improve our city-owned streetscapes?
Trees.
All right. He yields the balance of his time to John Whitmire.
I think what we've got to do is make certain that we prioritize the subject we're here tonight. From my experience in government, you're not going to fix something until you recognize it's a problem. We talk to each other. This room is full of folks that care, but we've got to take our message out of this room across Houston. Most Houstonians have no idea the lack of funds that we spend on parks. Most Houstonians will take a park for granted. They don't know really what it's like to live in a community that would have additional parks. So what I would say is you've got to talk about the issue, make it a priority. Get the council members involved. I want council members to be more active in their roles if I became mayor. I want to give them responsibility. If someone wants to take over illegal dumping, Councilmember Plummer, take illegal dumping and come back in 90 days and tell us how we're going to pay for it. If Tarsha Jackson wants to handle homelessness, that's her subject. Study it, come back with a plan, how we're going to pay for it. That's the way we're going to move this city forward. Include all of us. Department heads and council members have very little contact. I want to give them the responsibility and the authority to make a difference. You'd be surprised what we can do if we come together. But first, we have to recognize that we've got this challenge, and we've got to take it to every corner of Houston. And we can't have two Houstons. I'm so concerned as I cross the city. You've got cities Denver Harbor wants its first sidewalk. Then you go over in the Heights, they're tearing up 3-foot sidewalks for 8-foot sidewalks. We can't have this double standard.
Thank you.
We've got to work together.
Thank you, Senator. We're naming policies that can improve the city-owned streetscapes.
Today at the TTI committee, they reported on the progress of the climate action plan for the city of Houston. We've planted over 1 million trees in the city of Houston. The goal is to plant 4.6 million by 2030. As the next mayor, I will make sure that we meet that goal. I know that we have Barry in the audience in regards to Trees for Houston, and they do an outstanding job in the city of Houston. But again, that's 4.6. There's neighborhoods that has been reported that hardly have any trees in their neighborhood. That's not right. So again, these 4.6 million trees that are scheduled to be planted by 2030 as the next mayor, I want to make sure that we distribute those trees across the city, again, equitably. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what the senator said, because my view is let's do things right the first time.
There we go.
Hold on. Let's do things right the first time. If you look, they put those floating bus stops, those cement barriers there on 11th Street, where between the street and the bike lane. They put them up 6 months ago. Nobody knows how much they cost. Guess what? They just tore them down. And if the tearing down was $150,000. Do you know what we could have done with that money? It's probably 150 in, then 150 out. How many have you seen potholes where they've done them and they just kind of throw some asphalt on it, and then 6 months it's already a pothole again? That makes no sense. Let's do things right the first time. And then as it relates to Metro, because I'm very defensive of Metro because I love that place and it does so much good. We can always do better. And here's one. Do you know we have a little over 9,000 bus stops where barely 2,500 or so are sheltered? Let's get Metro to shelter more of those bus stops. Because can you imagine people trying to ride the bus at 108-degree temperature? They're not going to do it. So ridership has continued to plummet. It's too hot. The other thing is barely half are ADA acceptable. They're not even ADA compliant. So there's so many things that we've got to do, and someone's just got to say, no more, let's get it done. And that's what I do. I'm Gilbert Garcia. I want to be your mayor.
Thank you, Gilbert. Congresswoman, the question is, can you name a specific policy that you'd implement to improve our city-owned streetscapes?
Well, clearly I would want to build more trees or grow more trees or work with Trees for Houston and do more with our trees. And I'd want it to be across neighborhoods of all different types. The other point would be is work with our civic clubs and our super neighborhoods. Don't go it alone. Let people engage in how best that they want their areas, including communities that are less financially able than others. I still stand on the question of a public-private partnership. There are so many in our corporate community, and as I said, our venture capital community that would be eager to work with us. One park that I do want to mention is the Mickey Leland Park that is out on 610 on the east side. We need to look at the history of Houston, find ways to have our streetscapes sometimes reflect the historical stories that we have. Let me be very clear. I have relationships with every single governmental entity. Why? Because over these years, I've given them millions of dollars. Every single commissioner I know, every single county judge, I can assure you that we'll collaborate. Overnight, you're not going to get rid of county parks. What you are going to be able to do is possibly collaborate with them so that they also realize that Houston is in the county and they can work on some of our parks. That's one of the leaderships that I will do. As it relates to the state, I work for the state. During the pandemic and Hurricane Harvey, I worked with every state agency and leader to get dollars here. So it is about the experience you have overall. And for the streetscape, listening to you, working with wonderful architects and designers, and yes, it will cost money. I don't expect to throw money away, but I do expect to be fiscally responsible and find the resources to make our city beautiful.
Senator Whitmire, we've got a question. It's kind of a yes/no question. You can give back your balance of your time to Mr. Kaplan if you like. The Kinder Institute asked Houstonians if they would be willing to pay a small amount each month, and if those funds are going to go towards parks and green space. About 70% of city residents responded yes. Would you support a voter-approved dedicated funding source for parks and green space for Houston within your first 2 years in office? Yes or no?
You asking me?
Yes, sir.
I would, but there's a lot of work needs to be done before you do that. But certainly, as I said a while ago, we got to quit talking to each other and take the message across Houston. The polls will show they'll support parks and green space, but they're not going to just do the first thing that you ask them without building the confidence that the city's finances are being handled responsibly. So let's go down there, cut out waste, duplication, show them that we're running a smart, honest, lack of conflicts of interest operation, and then approach them, and I think we'll be well received. So yes is the answer, but I do think you have to be responsible and smart because we don't want to go to them just half prepared.
Right. Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Council member, your question. Would you be willing to support a voter-funded dedicated fund source for parks and green space for Houston within your first 2 years?
I mean, I would, but I'm not sure that's really going to do the trick. I mean, Parks Department, for example, has a 20-day mowing cycle, or a little over 20 days mowing cycle. I mean, I have residents calling my office because the grass is this tall, and they want to know why the grass isn't cut. Unfortunately, we don't have the funds. I know my opponents are saying that they're going to find the money somewhere. I've been there for 10 years. I would love them to find the money somewhere. But that's not the case. We haven't collected $1.9 billion since 2015 because of the revenue cap. But yet it saves the homeowner an average $100, $150 a year. That money could be used again for our parks. So our parks, the grass can be cut on a reasonable time frame. So that way kids can actually play on the playground equipment, not being eaten by mosquitoes because the grass is this tall. This is something that I want to work with the Parks Department, with all the departments, but initially have to work with the residents, the voters, so that way we can place it on the ballot. And again, it'll be the voters that decide, not me as the mayor. It'll be the voters. But I'm hoping to educate the voters to let them know that's where we're going to hire more police officers.
Thank you, sir. Now remember, this is a voter-approved, dedicated funding source. Would you approve that or support that?
I would certainly support it. Bam. Let's get the answer. I would support it. I certainly don't want another phony drainage tax where the drainage money's not being used for drainage projects. I would want to have a real thing. I would support it as long as it's going actually to what it was meant to be, which is on green space. Our drainage fee is being used to just go to normal expenses of the city. And if you look, depending upon how you want to do the fuzzy math, that of course there's no transparency there, but at the end of the day, whether it's 200 million or 400 million diverted from the inception to now, that is significant money that's not going to drainage. 200 million would have done a year's worth of projects. 400 million would have already built a whole nother reservoir. So I support it, and I would make sure it's done properly so the money's being used where it needs to be used for green space.
Thank you. Congresswoman.
There will be no fuzzy math in my administration, for sure. Any deal that will be made will be for the people of Houston. I've never made any deals that have not been pushed out to the people I represent. But yes, if it's voter-driven, yes. But here's the point. Those dollars will then have to have the input of our city and our community. One of the things I think we need to do with our parks is make them more children-friendly. One of the most successful programs, as my late colleague, that I had the privilege of joining on City Council, the late Eleanor Tinsley, who started something called the Sparks Park, which matches schools with recreational parks on the school grounds. I know that adults won't mind that when we have parks, we have an area that is for our children, a soft, safe area. And also that parks money, I don't think they would mind if we made the park safe. Safe for joggers, walkers, safe for, there may be gardening going on there. There's all kinds of things that can go on in parks. I used to like to plant flowers around the Houston housing development when I advocated for those people who lived in public housing that this is your home. Beautification would be part of making these parks open and acceptable to all. So dedicated funds to be used specifically, no funny and fuzzy math, but also to focus on making these parks more friendly to children and certainly safer for those who are using the parks.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Kaplan, your thoughts?
I don't believe in dedicated fees. I just don't believe in it. If we run the city well, then people will feel better about spending money on discretionary matters, which for many, the parks are discretionary matters. When you start dedicating fees, people feel more under siege. Bill White said the secret is to hire a good parks director. That's in the Kinder report. Anise and Sylvester said, manage the city well. If you want people to be comfortable in spending money on parks, they have to feel that the mayor, and particularly the mayor, has their best interests at heart and is managing the city well. So I don't believe in dedicated fees. I think that's a snare and a delusion. You're just taking money from some other need and making other people angry.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gallegos, we're going to start with you this time. Houston has benefited from many public-private partnerships. We've talked about that a little bit tonight. Public-private partnerships, Memorial Park, Herman Park, Discovery Green, for example. While a generous philanthropic community has supported all of these projects, donors typically require public dollars for maintenance. So, will you be willing to dedicate more public dollars to park maintenance to attract more private investment? Is that one way you could do that?
Okay. In regards to public-private partnerships, like I had mentioned in regards to the Botanic Garden, that was a public-private partnership. They went out and they reached out to the private sector and they raised monies. They're on their first of 4 phases. The Houston Golf Association did the same thing. They went out to the private sector, raised money, refurbished Gus Wortham, the oldest 18-hole golf course in the state of Texas. I know the Kinder Foundation has given a lot of money to our parks due to the fact that we don't have that revenue other than to maintain our parks, and we're still struggling in regards to maintaining our parks. So to say I'm going to give more money in the maintenance of our parks as the next mayor, what I will have to do once again is work with the finance director and our controller to see what we can do in order to maintain our parks. But again, I'm stating that, the past 2 years, our parks, the mowing cycle was over 20-some days. People were calling my office as a district council member complaining, why isn't their park mowed? We just don't have the funds to do so. So as the next mayor, again, it's so important that I want to go ahead and work with the finance director and the controller to see what we can do in regards to the revenue cap. That's $1.9 billion that has not been collected since 2015 in regards to saving a homeowner $100 to $150 a year.
Thank you, sir. Gilbert?
Yeah. For me, the answer to that question is heck yeah. And why do I mean that? Because if you have the leverage of, let's pretend we're going to put in $1 in the city and we can raise 4 private dollars, that leverage of 1 to 4 is so great, you have to find the money, right? If you can make $1 go 4, and so if any time you can really leverage private dollars, that should be at the front of the line on your public dollar expenditures, especially for infrastructure, quality of life, and other investments that are long-term investments. So the answer to that, how you frame it, is heck yeah.
Thank you, Gilbert. Congressman? Congresswoman?
For the record, that is not my wife. I just want to make it clear.
You're going to see we're having a good time, and I hope that you are likewise. We've already talked about a dedicated park fee, which I think is something that we can get the community to enjoy or participate in, or to be able to be utilized by the next mayor, which I want to be and expect to be. It is very important that we have community involvement, and that means volunteer efforts to be able to help maintain the park. That cannot be the only aspect of that, but I've seen us in many neighborhood cleanups go and clean up and work on our parks. But if we have a fee, I've already talked about the public-private partnerships. I really do believe in it. As I said, if I was in Washington and called and gathered from corporate Houston over $400,000 to keep the pools open, I know if you ask them, naming rights, various other ways that you can get the private sector to be involved, to encourage their contributions. And then I know that we can get the city of Houston involved in volunteer cleanup programs and working with community organizations. And again, listening to civic clubs and super neighborhoods. And again, as my colleague has said, working with our members of the city council, their district members, we can make a difference doing this together. Greenspace makes people happy. Greenspace calms people down. Greenspace brings people together. This is an international city. Go to the parks and see these wonderful festivals and see how many people are having a lot of great time.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Mr. Kaplan, I know you said no dedicated funds. This is a different kind of question about public dollars for park maintenance. Will you be willing to dedicate more public dollars to park maintenance to attract more private investment?
Well, it requires the mayor to be persuasive to get somebody to put up the money for maintenance for some period of time. Very, very many people would love to put up a park, have a plaque that said they're responsible for it, and then walk away from maintenance. We can't get away from that. The city can't take on that obligation. So far, of the 5 of us, only 2 have been really candid about the city's financial condition. The truth is, if you want that done, you need to make sure that you have a commitment from whoever is building a park or putting something together to put together a fund, a trust fund to maintain it. That's no different from maintenance of a cemetery plot in Forest Lawn Park or some other place. We've got to be honest with ourselves. The city can't take on a maintenance obligation. It's got to have a commitment before that particular improvement goes forward.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. Senator?
Certainly, maintenance has to be a priority. And I resent that we've put parking meters in Memorial Park and Herman Park for the purposes of maintenance. When they started going up, I called the mayor and I said, Sylvester, surely not paid parking in a city park. He said, well, that's to go towards the maintenance. And I understand that's a topic before us tonight. But I just don't think it generates enough to justify the difficulty on a hot day for someone to mess with paid parking. Let me raise another issue about affordability. We've got to maintain Houston's affordability, and we're losing the fight. Has anyone tried to go to the zoo? A city institution that's been privatized. Working families in Houston cannot afford to go to the Houston Zoo, and we've got to put a stop to that. I was out there recently and I raised the issue and they said, oh, we got gold card days. I said, well, that's great, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about teachers, firemen, plumbers. Working families cannot take a family of 4 to the park and afford the entrance. We can do better than that. We've got to make our city services affordable. We've got to make our housing affordable. So we have a lot of work to do, and if we come together, leave our political disputes at the door, I promise you we can continue to have a great city.
Thank you, Senator. This next question is a yes/no question as well. We'll see how quickly you get through this. Community members across Houston have raised concerns about public safety at parks. Parks are incredible assets for communities. We've established that. People do not feel safe. They will not be using those parks to their full potential. Will you commit to redirecting police officers or other public safety personnel to parks within your first 6 months in office? Gilbert.
I want to, but I can't make that promise and commitment. I'm not going to commit to something that I cannot deliver. I just not. What I do commit to do is, number one, improve the street lighting in parts of the area that are high crime areas. Number two, hire more civilians because there are too many police officers that are doing civilian work, and we need to get those police officers out in the beat. And number three, try to implement and expand the community policing that we have. In other words, rather than have all the police centered in one area, start spreading them out, whether they're near parks or not, we can achieve the same objective. Because if you have an outpost with a few police officers, the visibility alone will be a great deterrent. But I don't want to make a commitment I cannot keep, which is to start dedicating police officers to the park. I know we need it, but you know what? We need them everywhere. We need them in the neighborhoods. We need them in the grocery stores. We need them in the Galleria. We need them everywhere. Thank you.
Congresswoman?
I think as I've gone across this city and as I've worked with the city in my present capacity, the question of public safety is on everyone's mind. One of the reasons why I provided a large amount of dollars, federal dollars, to law enforcement, both the Sheriff Department as well as the Houston Police Department. That's why I collaborate with the federal police agencies that are here, that are ready and willing to collaborate with our own Houston Police Department. I think what would be the most efficient way of doing this is to ensure that crime in our neighborhoods comes down, that we target high crime areas, which is my plan, to make sure the criminals know, go away and don't come back. I will be a crime fighter. We will have time to assess how we utilize the new cadet classes that are hopefully will be coming in, because you have to prioritize your budget. The senior member of the House Budget Committee, you have to prioritize your budget. And so I want to make sure that we increase the numbers of police, but we emphasize police-community relationships. We can use federal dollars for gun violence, ending or stopping gun trafficking, but also gun violence intervention or violence intervention. As it relates to our parks, if we make our neighborhoods safe, our parks will be safe. And then as we grow and add numbers to the Houston Police Department by way of cadet classes that we pay for, then we can be able to utilize and have a assistance in those parks. There are also park rangers, and they're not armed as I understand it, but certainly during the daytime, we can ramp up the park rangers that come in the Parks and Recreation. We can also work with the state of Texas to be helpful as well.
Thank you.
There are ways of doing it. We want to make sure our parks are safe.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Mr. Kaplan.
The mayor paid $775,000 when he was first elected for what's called a PFM study. That's a group that studies municipalities, how they can be more efficient. The first thing they said was civilianize a lot more of the desk jobs to have more people on the street. We actually have community policing, we just don't have enough police. We have half as many officers per capita as Chicago and New York. And I don't think Houston is twice as law-abiding as Chicago and New York. We're not. So that's the first thing. I do think lighting is a good idea, more cadet classes. But until the city impresses the citizenry that we're running the city right, which is why I've focused on those four major issues, we're not going to be able to lift the revenue cap. And the fact is, until we do that, we will not have enough public safety. We just won't. So let's be honest. Let's try to run the city efficiently, at least the first 2 years, and then we can talk to the citizens about whether they're willing to be taxed a little bit more. I do not think the legislature will ever help us. They do not give a damn about Houston. They just don't. And Senator Whitmire's efforts notwithstanding, that's not going to change. So we're going to have to do it, and that's by having a mayor who runs the city right and tells people the truth, addresses our problems, and that gives people the confidence that somebody will spend their money right.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. Senator Whitmire.
If we don't address public safety, probably nothing else matters. I have people come up to me in the Heights and say, Senator, you've got to do something. We don't leave the house after 5 o'clock. Families will not take the children to the parks. I'm uniquely qualified because I work with law enforcement on a regular basis. What we have to do is be smarter. We have to collaborate. There's 85 police agencies in Harris County. They don't work with each other. Little York on the north side. North side of Little York is Harris County. South side of the street is HPD. They don't even talk to one another. If we would get organized and have a leader that knows how to bring people together, we could use Metro officers, get them off just the transit lines, but into the neighborhood to support HPD. U of H has its police department, TSU, Rice, the Med Center. We could spend the rest of the evening talking about our resources, but we're not bringing it together and getting a smart result. If we do not solve public safety, it's not only going to affect our quality of life, but it's going to affect our economy. People are beginning to not go to the Galleria. The property values in Galleria area are dropping because of the concern about safety. Mexican nationals that have money to spend are not coming to the Galleria. They're going to San Antonio. So we've got to come together as a community and address public safety. I know the subject. I've been endorsed by the police, by the fire, by the way. Public safety includes paramedics. Houston city employees have endorsed me. I'm known as someone that can bring people together and get things done and make this community safe.
Councilmember Gallegos.
HPD has about 5,400 officers. And that's not 5,400 officers patrolling right now at this hour. That's divided amongst 3 shifts. So you're looking at maybe 1,800 officers. And that's those that are not on vacation, those that didn't call in sick, patrolling over 645 square miles. So they do a great job. And let me make it perfectly clear, the employees of the Parks Department also do a great job. I know I've been talking about the parks, of the grass growing and what have you. They do the best they can with the resources we're able to give them. But again, in regards to more police officers at parks, that will be hard to do. But with that said, as the next mayor, I will work with the substations to make sure they at least drive through the parking lot of a park on their regular patrol route. Also working with the park rangers. If we can, maybe hire more park rangers. So that way they can be out at the parks. But to say to have HPD officers at the parks, that will be hard to do, since the fact that we only have 5,400, even though we did approve a $10,000 sign-on bonus, which has helped to hire more police officers, because we're competing with other cities on trying to hire good qualified individuals to be police officers. They're coming to Houston to take good qualified individuals to Los Angeles and DC and Baltimore and what have you. So we now are competitive with a $10,000 sign-on bonus. But because of attrition, it's hard to keep those numbers going up.
Thank you, sir. Next question. Congresswoman Jackson Lee, we'll start with you this time. We all know that you all have vast experience either in government or the private sector. The question is there any outside-the-box thinking or entrepreneurial kind of actions that you have employed in your professional career that could be applied to Houston's park system?
I've been talking about it all along. I think that the crucial population of corporate and foundations and private sector have not been tapped in this community. And I have worked with them extensively in my public sector life because they can be quite constructive in problem solving, in doing research. Rice University, for example, is an enormous research institution along with our other institutions, University of Houston, of course, Texas Southern University. So the elements that I have worked with are the public and private sector working together, and as well research components that can make this town a research epicenter by using Rice University, using the medical center, and the research that's already being done, and making this city a place that will be an epicenter of new research, creating an economic economy that deals with new discoveries, innovation, and new economic opportunity.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Mr. Kaplan?
If you think you're the smartest person in the room, you need to find another room. The way that I have always run my small business is to assume that everybody else has something to contribute. The youngest lawyers at my firm have ideas. And while I might react negatively to them at the beginning, I listen to them, and a lot of times they're right. That was one of that was the genius of Bill White. He probably was the smartest person in the room, but he listened. And Anise Parker was the same way. We have to always look outside the box for more experts. You know, the people who wrote this report, the Kinder report on parks, I don't think any of them are city employees. They took it upon themselves to do that. And the mayor who's dealt with the private sector and represented everybody from ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips to indigent defendants is somebody, and indigent plaintiffs, is somebody who can reach out to a new cadre of people with ideas. I hire experts all the time, not because I know that they know better than me, but many of them do. Many of them have terrible ideas. But a good mayor filters that out and listens to that. That's what I intend to do. We need a new generation of people who feel the challenge of coming to the city and making improvements.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. Senator.
This spring, at the request of the city, I carried legislation creating the entertainment district downtown. 3 miles in every direction from George Brown, we will capture the hotel occupancy tax increase. It's going to be $3 billion in the next 30 years. You'll see results immediately. We're going to enlarge the George Brown, improve the infrastructure, improve public safety, but here's the exciting part about Greenspace. With 45 and 59 going underground behind the George Brown, we will do an east side entrance to the George Brown Convention Center. That will be a huge green space, several times Tranquility Park. We will have concerts and family activities. It will open up the whole east side to downtown Houston. Exciting things like that. Talking about bringing people together in expertise. Joe Turner, I'm proud to announce tonight, has contacted me, one of the best park directors we've ever had. He would come back if I'm fortunate to be mayor. There are people like Marlene Gaffridge, former planning commissioner, director, wanting to come back because they were frustrated in previous years. But now if you had a can-do mayor, someone that will bring people together, I'm getting calls from people that will bring their expertise and their public commitment to service this community. Let's get things done, use experience, bring the community together, and use a lot of common sense, be fiscally responsible, but think outside the loop. There are just so many things. The Med Center, huge resource. They just created their own TERS. They could help us over in Herman Park and the surrounding areas along the bayou. There's just a lot of things if you have the experience to get things done.
Councilmember Gallegos looking for entrepreneurial actions to help the park system.
Yes, in regards to the Mayor's 50-50 parks, I know that Hartman Park in Manchester was the first park to participate in the 50-50 parks. And the reason why is because I had gone out there one day and noticed that the iron play equipment that had been there for decades was rusted. So I called Valero, our governmental affairs person from Valero, which is right next door. It's a fence line community next to Valero. And I called the governmental relations person and I said, hey, Michael, I'm here at Hartman Park. I noticed that there's rust on this play equipment. Could it be the chemicals in the air from Valero? Oh man, he just started, oh, whoa, wait, council member, da, 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 da. The next day, he calls. Says he called the San Antonio corporate office. They're gonna be putting new play equipment. It cost $600,000, but they've got a beautiful play equipment. And I want to thank the Parks Department because they met with the community, and the community was able to design the play equipment that they wanted. That's one of 3 parks regarding 50-50 parks. We have Dow Park that we just did ribbon cutting a couple of months ago. Hidalgo Park just about 3 weeks ago. These are improvements that were done in these parks that have been neglected by the city for decades.
Thank you, Councilmember.
I'm a little with Lee on this, which is the best thing that the mayor can do is run the city well. That's the best thing the mayor can do for the Parks Department or any other department. The mayor is the CEO of the city. So the mayor has to set a strong tone at the top that there's going to be no malfeasance. There's not going to be, you got to streamline the bureaucracy. I've done that. When did I do it? When I was chairman of Metro. If you go back to 2009, what was going on at Metro? They couldn't pay their bills. They had violated their own procurement rules. They dug up the streets and didn't have the money to complete the light rail. There was litigation everywhere. It was a mess. And what did we do? We put the check registry online on the internet. We increased transparency. We put all the meetings online on the internet, all the materials. You don't have to FOIA Metro because everything's there. We started paying our bills. We had a hiring freeze. We brought the FTA in the office, and then we completed the full funding grant agreement, of course, with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. You bet. We got the $900 million, and from there we built rail on time and under budget. And you know how many people said to me there at Metro, we can't do that, Mr. Chairman? And I'd say, why? Because it's never been done that way. Well, you know what? That probably means we should do it that way. And that's the type of CEO I will be. I'm Gilbert Garcia. I'm ready to be your mayor.
Thank you, Gilbert. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard an awful lot tonight from these candidates about their thoughts about parks and what is best for them and what they will want to do. And I want to thank you for coming. I want to give the candidates an opportunity to finish by giving 1 minute comments about their thoughts about this evening, about their application to you to be the next mayor. So I want to start with, did I give you a chance? I want to make sure I give everybody a chance on that question. I started with you, Lee Kaplan, it's your turn.
You know, Gilbert and I joke, we can all give each other speeches because we've been in a lot of forums. Look, these are a bunch of bright people. They are. But the truth is, it takes an outsider to say, are you kidding me? Why are we going to do it that way? That doesn't make any sense. And I do like to argue with people, including my own son. And that's how I find out whether people really have some basis for their ideas. One of the things I talked about at the very beginning is competence, accountability, and integrity. And you have to start with that to build the confidence in the citizens that the city is doing things right. The other thing I mentioned this evening is humility, because none of us is the smartest person in the room. We just aren't. And so I intend, as an outsider, to ask those hard questions and make people in every department explain what we should be doing and appoint the best people and turn them loose to do a good job. That will make this a greater city.
Thank you, sir. Senator Whitmire.
I was a 22-year-old University of Houston senior when I ran for the legislature. Got elected with Mickey Leland, Sophronia, Ben Reyes, and other great legislators. I believe that was a calling. I don't believe that was an accident. 2 years ago, I was asked by constituents, would I run for the mayor of Houston? I said no, and then they said, what would it take to get you to consider it? And I started naming the quality of life issues that we're talking about tonight. I've prepared my entire adult life to be mayor of Houston. If you give me an opportunity to use the experience that I've learned from working with 9 mayors and countless other elected officials, their best practices, you give me that opportunity and I'm willing to give the remaining good years of my life to Houstonians. First day, I know we can make this community safer, and certainly we will unite it and everyone will be at the table. That's my record, and that's what I'll do the first day. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Council member.
Again, I'm Councilmember Robert Gallegos. I represent District I. I ask you to go to voterobertgallegos.com. I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish these past 10 years. I know my opponents are here on stage saying what they will do when they become mayor. Well, I actually have a record of what I have done. We have a botanic garden. We have Gus Wortham Golf Course. I worked with those that were running to be the port commissioner 4 years ago. I met with each one of them one-on-one. Joe Turner, the former director of Parks Department, said, Council member, there's 20-some acres on the other side of Buffalo Bayou from Hidalgo Park we've been trying to get since the Bill White administration. I met with each candidate that was running for the chairman of the Port Commission. I asked him, if you become the chairman, will you work in giving back to the communities that you're impacting along the port? They all said yes. Sure enough, when Mr. Campo became the chairman, within a few months, I received a call saying, council member, we're giving those 20 acres to the city of Houston. So that's going to be an expansion of Hidalgo Park and along Buffalo Bayou, the hike and bike trail along Buffalo Bayou. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Once again, if you want the same old solutions, the same old ideas, the same old that have been going on for 50 years, I am not your candidate. But if you're looking for someone that's going to say, the city's not working for me, whether it's the water, whether it's the housing fiasco, whether it's the health department fiasco, whether it's the firefighter fiasco, whether it's boiling the water, you name it, on and on, whether it's trash potholes, if you want someone that's going to shake it up, that's me. Because I want the city of Houston to be in the same breath of the great cities of the world. I don't want to be satisfied being better than San Antonio. I don't want to be satisfied being better than San Francisco. I want to be in the same breath of New York, London, Paris, Barcelona, all these great cities of the world. We can do it, and we should strive for it. And that's what I want to be if I were mayor of Houston. I'm Gilbert Garcia. I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you, Gilbert. Congresswoman?
This is a historic moment in this city. It is now a time for Houstonians to decide what their future is. What kind of livable city this will be. Whether we'll go into the future, whether it'll be a city that the graduates of our universities will say, I'm staying here because we're creating jobs. We're making a difference. From my national experience, to be able to bring investors and jobs that will come. We have great city employees, and thank you for mentioning Parks and Recreation. I've worked with them all along. I've worked with every single mayor since I went to the United States Congress and before. Every single disaster that you had in this city, I brought federal funds. I made sure that you had $155 billion for Hurricane Harvey. When we had the pandemic, I was on the ground. I was not hunkered down and locked in with 150 plus testing sites and vaccination sites. Not for me, but to be able to use the federal connection and work with the state to make a difference. It's not what people are going to do. You got to look at what they have done and whether they can get it done, as the United States military says. Traveled around the world with them. Those are the best guys and ladies that you could ever see. I'll run this city to be the best city in this nation and around the world. Sheila Jackson Lee for mayor. I'll get it done.
Before we conclude, I want to acknowledge you. I was acknowledge you before you even came up here. Councilmember Carolyn Evelyn Chavez is here. District D, thank you for hosting us here. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you have gained knowledge that will help you make your decisions about these candidates tonight. I want to ask that you would all give them a big round of applause for them being here. I want to thank the host for helping to make this happen tonight. Thank you all for what you do, giving your time, your dedicated servants to run for this office. It's amazing that you do so. Thank you for that. And thank you for giving us ideas about what we may do when we come to the polls. I actually live in Sugar Land. I can't vote for them, but I know that you will be able to do that as well. So thank you. Get out and vote in November. Support the parks, whatever you do in the ballot box. Support them all the way. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. Thank you.